The rope around her wrists felt ceremonial, almost sacred in its cruelty. Bound to an ornate pillar in what used to be her family's garden, Simone Harper became Fair Hollow's most visible invisible woman. The town's elite sipped champagne around her, none questioning why the mayor's foster daughter wore serving attire, or why she alone among the gathered crowd bore the weight of their uncomfortable history on her shoulders. Humiliation wasn't foreign to Simone, but this cut deeper than anything before. The towering white pillars of the Whitmore mansion had sheltered her since childhood, yet love within those walls always came with conditions attached. When her mother passed away at 7, Simone found herself transplanted into Mayor Charles Whitmore's picture-perfect household. "We're offering her a fresh start," he'd announced to reporters, his grip on her shoulder possessive rather than protective, treating her like livestock at an auction. This fresh start included elegant furniture, ballet lessons, and endless reminders to maintain appearances for photographers. Simone mastered the art of vanishing while remaining physically present. Meredith, her golden-haired, impeccably dressed stepsister, dubbed her the media token. Charles, who publicly dismissed civil rights demonstrations as metropolitan disorder, never permitted her to use the word father. Despite everything, Simone remained. She secured academic scholarships, funded her education, and came back to Fair Hollow not from obligation, but from hope that she could create change from within. For countless years, she prevented the Whitmore empire from financial ruin through silent generosity, discreet contributions, unnamed grants, hidden bailouts channeled through her charity networks. She never sought recognition, simply hoping they would eventually value her beyond her utility as a reputation manager. Yet the Whitmores remained, blind to anything beyond the character they'd crafted for her. The November charity gala dawned overcast with anticipation and calculated performance. Activity filled every corner of the estate. Food service teams arranging warming trays, event planners adjusting floral arrangements. Simone had orchestrated every detail. Each benefactor acknowledged on the recognition wall represented her personal outreach. Months of coordination had gone into ensuring the event would boost the mayor's re-election campaign. When the printed programs arrived, her name was absent. Not in production credits, not in thank you sections, nowhere to be found. Instead, a tan uniform bearing her name tag lay folded outside her bedroom door. No explanation accompanied it, only instructions reading, "Beverage service, outdoor section, door." The fabric felt familiar between her fingertips, reminiscent of her childhood Sunday attire. Gentle, pristine, submissive. She examined the interior label, finding no designer mark, only ownership. Walking away would have been the wise choice, the healthy decision. But Clara's wisdom echoed in her memory. Her neighbor, her trusted friend, the sole person who spoke Simone's complete name with genuine affection. "You don't burn down something you helped construct," Clara had once counseled. "But when it's already ablaze, don't let yourself get buried in the ashes." Simone donned the uniform. By midday, distinguished guests filled the grounds: state legislators, corporate leaders, a religious broadcaster whose smile never touched his eyes. The property gleamed with manufactured elegance. Meredith drifted across the lawn like effervescent mist, engaging journalists with practiced spontaneity. Charles gripped his whiskey tumbler, greeting attendees with the enthusiasm of an athletic coach rallying his team. Simone remained unnoticed. Not when she filled glasses for a woman who remarked, "How unusual to have such striking staff." Not when she collected dishes while 2 board members praised the mayor's compassion in rescuing that unfortunate child. She felt transparent, yet breakable, like crystal caught in a tempest. Then catastrophe struck. A champagne flute tumbled from someone's grasp, exploding near the beverage station. Simone dropped instinctively, gathering the fragments. Blood pooled in her palm precisely as Meredith approached the microphone. "Oh, no need for concern," Meredith announced sweetly to the assembled crowd. "She's always excelled at clean-up duty." Nervous, laughter rippled through polite applause. Simone rose, her expression neutral, her eyes ablaze. her heartbeat pounding like ancient drums beneath her ribs. Charles tapped his glass, commanding attention. "Dear friends," he began, his rehearsed cadence embracing the audience like silk. "Tonight's celebration extends beyond Thanksgiving. It's about honoring our identity, our heritage, and our progress." Simone tensed. Charles pressed on. "We've prepared a special historical demonstration, a living tribute." Two young event coordinators approached her, clearly uncomfortable, obviously instructed. They guided her arms gently. "You'll participate in the presentation," one murmured. "Just briefly." Simone offered no resistance. Her body complied without her consent, as guests formed a circle around the fountain's decorative pillar, designed to echo antebellum courthouse architecture. Simone was positioned against it. Silk restraints encircled her wrists loosely, but their symbolism was unmistakably tight. She stood motionless, chin raised, breath trapped beneath skin that remembered generations of trauma. Charles lifted his glass again. This symbolic gesture reminds us of burdens carried in silence. More uncomfortable chuckling. More photographs. A quiet that screamed volumes. Simone's gaze swept the gathering, meeting no returned looks. Then came an unexpected sound, the deep rumble of a refined engine, sleek and commanding, approaching the event boundary like controlled thunder. A midnight black Rolls-Royce halted at the grass edge. The chauffeur opened the passenger door. Elijah Brooks emerged. He neither rushed nor shouted. His movement was deliberate, measured, absolute. He traversed the garden as if he'd designed every stone pathway himself. Simone spotted him first. She recognized the rage in his clenched jaw, the gravity in his stare, and the sword of righteousness he wielded through his composure. She remained, steadfast. He reached her side. Kneeling, he retrieved a knife from his jacket, severed the bindings cleanly, and cradled her wounded palm. He pressed his lips tenderly to the cut, then stood to confront the speechless audience. "This woman is my spouse," he declared, his voice steady, quiet, unshakable. "I want an explanation for why she was displayed like a museum piece." The breeze died. The crowd froze, and the flame long buried in Simone's heart began to ignite. Shocked murmurs spread through the tent like wind through autumn wheat. Glasses shook. Someone's silverware clattered to the ground. Elijah's stare never wavered. Initially, nobody responded. Not the servers, not the officials, not even Charles, who remained under the spotlights, clutching his partially raised glass, like incriminating evidence. Simone, now liberated, stood beside Elijah with marked wrists, her bearing as unshakable as her companion's. Her trembling had ceased entirely. Charles regained composure first. "Mr. Brooks," he offered with a strained grin, "this isn't what you think." Elijah barely acknowledged him. "I hope not, because it appears to be the public degradation of your daughter." He placed a supportive hand on Simone's spine. A small gesture, stabilizing and grounding. Charles attempted a laugh, but it fractured midway. "Simone has always been family here. You've never expressed that to her directly." Another silence, longer and icier. Elijah produced a folded paper from his coat and presented it to Charles. 3 months back, this estate faced imminent foreclosure. You contacted every possible supporter, damaged relationships. You required a miracle. Charles examined the document, then looked back at Elijah, his eyes darting nervously. "She didn't inform you?" Elijah inquired calmly. Charles remained mute. He turned to Simone. She met his stare for the first time in years without flinching. "I settled the obligations," Simone stated. Her voice was quiet but didn't need volume. "All of them. I depleted my personal savings, sold my vehicle, exhausted my organization's emergency funds through anonymous contribution protocols. You still assigned me catering clothes." Whispers resumed around them. Simone felt the atmosphere shift, not just from her words, but from the following hush. It wasn't the cold, dismissive quiet she'd endured for years. This carried weight. curiosity, judgment, as if the room had pivoted to scrutinize Charles instead of her. Charles's mouth opened and closed wordlessly. His wife, adorned in pearl jewelry and wearing a fixed smile, stepped forward. "You could have mentioned something," she whispered. "No," Simone replied. "I couldn't." With that, she departed the platform, not from embarrassment or sorrow. She walked like someone finally escaping a prison that had always been unlocked but cleverly disguised as sanctuary. She spoke to no one while passing through the crowd, but she observed them, faces familiar since childhood, educators, clergy, family associates who once offered hesitant embraces and backhanded compliments. They appeared different now, diminished. Elijah trailed behind her like a silent current. In the mansion's corridor, where framed photographs lined the walls, portraits of Meredith's performances, Charles's inaugurations, family holidays that never included her, Simone paused. One image remained vivid in her memory: her 10th birthday year. A regional magazine had featured the mayor's holiday charity campaign, and she'd been positioned at the photo's edge, nearly excluded from the frame. She stood in an ivory dress, clutching a small wrapped gift for the camera, smiling too intensely. She removed it from the wall now, turning it over. Behind her, Elijah asked, "Are you all right?" She held the photograph extensively. "No, but I believe I'm finally becoming all right." Later, that evening, after guests had quietly departed and Charles had withdrawn behind locked doors, Simone sat with Elijah in the old conservatory. The space remained unchanged since childhood: worn cushions, delicate curtains, the scent of furniture wax and neglect. She remembered reading novels here during storms, legs curled beneath her, pretending she inhabited a home that didn't view her as a gilt placeholder. "I wanted their affection," she whispered. "For so long I believed if I remained, worked harder, gave more, they would recognize me." Elijah didn't interrupt. He never did. But they didn't, she continued. "No," he replied, gently. "But everyone else did." He opened his phone. The footage of her bound to the post, of Elijah cutting the restraints, of Charles's stunned expression was already circulating online. Hundreds of thousands of views, hashtags, support, outrage. "They're calling it the modern plantation moment," Elijah said, scrolling. "And someone launched a crowdfunding campaign to replace your car." She laughed. For the first time in days, the sound felt foreign in the room. Outside, darkness had settled. The illuminated house resembled a theater after the final performance. Quiet, haunted by spectacle. The following day, the backlash commenced. Messages flooded the mayor's office. Radio commentators denounced it as shameful. National media covered the story by noon, and demonstrators assembled at the estate's entrance by sunset. Charles attempted damage control. "This was a miscommunication," he announced at a press conference. "A private matter exaggerated beyond proportion." But credibility had evaporated. Meredith's podcast sponsors withdrew. The Family Foundation's board froze funding pending investigation, and a previous audit resurfaced, one that Simone had concealed by redirecting emergency funds to cover irregularities. The press questioned who had saved the mayor's property from bankruptcy. Elijah published the complete financial records. Simone maintained silence until the community assembly. It convened in the high school gymnasium under flickering fluorescents and echoing acoustics. The space overflowed. Simone entered late, slipping, through a side entrance, unnoticed until she approached the speaker's platform. The room quieted like a collectively held breath. "I hadn't planned on speaking," she began. "I've spent most of my life here learning how not to speak." A pause as she surveyed the faces, some ashamed, some tearful, some defiant. "I discovered early that some people perceive skin like mine as a burden or a badge, never simply skin. I learned to minimize myself, to be useful, to be invisible." The silence deepened. "But I am no longer invisible, and I refuse to carry someone else's shame in my bones." No one interrupted. Simone's voice remained steady. "Fair Hollow deserves better, and so do I." Afterward, people approached her quietly, genuinely, not with apologies, but with introspection, the kind that settles in the chest like rain after drought. She didn't linger. There was work to be done. Over the subsequent weeks, Charles resigned. The family estate transferred to Simone under legal arrangements Elijah had secured months earlier, preparing for the worst. Meredith left town. Clara moved in. They repainted the gates, demolished the pillar, converted the ballroom into a community gathering space. The new entrance sign read, "Harper House, for those who were told they don't belong." Inside her new office's tranquility, Simone stood before the old family portrait. Everyone else had faded into the background over time, but she had somehow sharpened into clarity. She didn't smile this time, but she felt something superior, stable, complete. As she positioned a new frame on the mantelpiece, a photograph of herself, Elijah, Clara, and a group of neighborhood children painting a mural on the house's exterior, she whispered aloud what she had never dared voice before. "I'm home." The outside winds shifted gently, and the pillar that once supported her shame now formed part of the foundation lifting others up. But the reckoning wasn't finished yet. The dedication ceremony's morning arrived quietly and heavily, like the calm preceding a southern summer thunderstorm. Fair Hollow buzzed with whispers not yet formed into words. Local radio debated whether Mayor Whitmore had genuinely resigned or was simply waiting for controversy to fade. The atmosphere was thick with opinions but starved of resolution. Inside what had been the Whitmore estate, Simone Harper stood barefoot in the Grand Hall center. The polished floor beneath her feet reflected early sunlight in broad golden streams. She wore no cosmetics, no designer clothing, only a gentle blue blouse tucked into dark denim and a simple silver necklace her mother had worn during concerts. Clara hummed in the kitchen, stirring sweet tea like it was blessed water. Elijah entered the room, adjusting his tie knot, appearing equally dignified and rebellious. He stopped beside her, studying her face with careful tenderness that never drew attention to itself. "This isn't required," he said. "It is," she replied, "but I'm not doing it for their sake anymore." Outside, the crowd was assembling. Neighbors, city officials, former teachers, and even several teenagers who had spray-painted "Justice for Simone" on the school fence the previous week. The new sign above the estate's entrance now proclaimed, "Harper House, a space for voice, not silence." It wasn't merely symbolic. The ground floor had been renovated into a nonprofit center. Free legal assistance, tutoring programs, a community kitchen operating weekends. Former polished showrooms now housed second-hand desks and vibrant murals created by local children. One of them, 8-year-old Marcus, had painted a winged pillar where Simone had once stood restrained. He'd titled it, "The Turning Point." A podium stood beneath that mural now. Simone approached it slowly as cameras flashed and reporters leaned forward. She looked transformed, still quiet, still composed, but nothing constrained remained in her posture. She had shed something invisible and suffocating. Perhaps it was permission. Perhaps it was shame. Her voice carried clearly without requiring volume. "Thank you for joining us," she began. "I understand this makes some uncomfortable." She paused, letting it settle. "Good, because silence should create discomfort." A hush fell, not the stifling kind she'd grown up with, but an attentive kind. For years, this house represented power, image, control. It displayed generosity while harboring judgment. It performed grace publicly but dealt in private cruelty. She didn't mention names. She didn't need to. I was told to be thankful, that survival was a gift, that my silence proved my position. But I was never silent. I was simply unheard. Her eyes moved over the crowd. Some shifted uncomfortably. Some nodded. "This house is no longer a monument. It's a doorway." She stepped back. The applause wasn't thunderous, but it was sustained, genuine. After the ceremony, people remained, not from obligation, but because something in the air felt incomplete. Clara served cornbread and collard greens to a circle of seniors on the porch, while two teenagers debated historical quotes beneath. "The oak tree." Simone stood in the shade, letting the breeze weave through her fingers. Then came the letter, delivered in a plain envelope without a return address. She opened it slowly, heart racing, not from fear but from recognition. Inside was handwritten text, "Simone, you were never meant to suffer like that. But I didn't intervene. I laughed, I smiled, I took photographs. I didn't understand how to be courageous. And you did. That night changed everything for me. I'm leaving Fair Hollow. Maybe permanently. But I wanted to say I'm sorry. Meredith Simone." Read it twice, then folded it once and slipped it into her back pocket. She didn't need to frame it or share it. Some apologies weren't meant for exhibition. They were simply bridges no longer burning. That evening, she stood once more in the conservatory. Lights dimmed, her reflection faint in the glass. "I used to believe justice had to be loud," she said, mostly to herself. Elijah, seated nearby, looked up from his book. "And now? Now I think it has to be still enough to endure." He nodded. On the fireplace mantel sat the new family photograph. No poses, no forced smiles, just Simone, Elijah, Clara, and 4 neighborhood kids painting a wall together. No one looked at the camera. Outside, a breeze picked up, gentle, warm, and carrying wood smoke from nearby chimneys. Simone stepped onto the back porch, feeling the boards creak beneath her feet. The pillar that once stood in the garden had been replaced with a small sculpture, an open hand holding a key. She stared at it for a long while, the silence wrapping around her not like a verdict, but like a held breath finally released. Down the path, someone had left a single chair facing the setting sun, a seat perhaps for who she used to be. She didn't sit in it. She smiled, turned, and walked back toward the life she had finally made her own. Because justice, when it stays, doesn't need to announce its arrival. It simply opens the door and waits for the next person to step through.